Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we will teach from the words of my perfect teacher. We are currently teaching the trainings of applied bodhicitta, which should cover the 6 perfections. The perfections of generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. Among the 6 perfections, we are now teaching the perfection of patience, which is divided into 3 aspects. The second of these is patience in enduring hardships for the sake of Dharma. This section mainly teaches that in our process of seeking the Dharma, we must undergo countless hardships before we can obtain the true Dharma of liberation. To accomplish the sacred Dharma, we must disregard all hardships and difficulties, enduring extreme cold and heat in our practice. In our process of learning and studying, generally speaking, we will certainly encounter some obstacles and difficulties, but at such times, even worldly people often say, "Go through fire and water to seek the true Dharma." There are such sayings, just as it is said in the Tantras, cross mountains of blades and seas of fire, sacrifice one's life to seek the sacred Dharma. To obtain the sacred Dharma, cross mountains of blades, cross seas of fire, abandon one's most precious life to obtain the true sacred Dharma. Previously, Buddha also said in the Sutra on Skillful Precepts, the thirst for Dharma is so intense that one does not cherish body or life. To obtain the sacred Dharma, one does not hesitate to abandon one's own life. In the world, people often say, climbing mountains of swords, descending into seas of fire. For worldly goals, they also have such diligence and courage. So for obtaining true liberation, needless to say, therefore, in our learning process, some people often encounter difficulties. At such times, we cannot become fragile. Because of this, cannot lose confidence because of this. We must strive for the sacred Dharma. Just like the great masters of the Kadampa tradition in the past, with their 4 reliances. What are the 4 reliances? Mind relies on Dharma. Dharma relies on poverty. Poverty relies on death. Death relies on a dried up ravine. Actually, the Kadampa tradition in their practice, just like the Chang school in Han regions, they have particularly good reliances, a set of 4 methods. First, our mind must certainly rely on the Dharma. The mind cannot rely on other worldly Dharmas. This won't work. The mind must definitely rely on the Dharma of liberation. Dharma relies on poverty. True Buddhist Dharma may not be accomplished amid very abundant material conditions. It cannot necessarily be accomplished, generally speaking, with a particularly simple life, like the lives of great masters in the past. With a relatively simple life, in a state of poverty, it can be accomplished. Moreover, this poverty is not just being poor while you are seeking the Dharma, but later, gradually gaining fame, and then beginning to become wealthy. After becoming wealthy, can practice, still succeed, it cannot succeed. So this poverty continues until death, and death also occurs in a mountain valley. For truly superior practitioners, this is extremely important. Whether in the past, present, or at any time, our practitioners should be divided into many levels, like Milarepa and the various masters of the Kadampa tradition, and many from the Chan school, in forests, in thatched huts, in mountain caves, practicing there for their entire lives. This type of practitioner does not concern themselves with various worldly trivial matters, because their goal is first their own liberation. So at this time, they abandon everything and engage in ascetic practices without any regret. Previously, in the Flower Ornament Sutra, it was also said, head, eyes, and hands and feet, muscles given without regret seeking various scriptures, the mind has no weariness. Without any weariness, this mental attitude is actually that of truly superior practitioners. Many great masters of the Kadampa tradition were indeed like this. In our process of seeking scriptures, everyone knows about Xuanzang's journey to obtain scriptures. Actually, on the journey, there were countless disasters, 81 difficulties. All were cast aside, and finally, the true sacred Dharma was obtained. So in our process of learning and practice, truly, if one is a supreme person, one spends their entire life in mountain valleys. Even today, there are some hermitages in Han regions. I hear that places like Mount Zhongnan and Yunju Mountain. In many mountains, there are particularly many practitioners who dwell alone there permanently. In Tibetan areas, including some caves near Lhasa and Samye, there are often many hermits. Basically, among those I know, some retreat practitioners have been in mountain caves for about 20 years continuously. They would never come back, even if they did return. There's a practitioner from my hometown who basically left his hometown over 20 years ago. He came back last year, probably stayed for 3 or 4 days. At that time, his mother died and others notified him to come down. After coming down, family members asked him to stay home for 49 days. He said, "I can stay for 7 days," and then disappeared again. He was heard to be in a mountain cave again. Later, the family also felt this person seemed to have died long ago and stopped caring about him. He himself never contacts home. This is a supreme practitioner. But many people initially start as supreme practitioners, not contacting home for 2 or 3 years. But later, gradually, the relationships become closer and closer. So this kind of practice, generally speaking, they ultimately also die in mountain valleys, die in mountain caves. When dying, it's also as Milarepa said, no one looks at their corpse. Worldly people might think this is very tragic. Actually, there's no particular difference. Today, many scholars and young people here might have gone to see corpses at the charnel ground. Some people said, cutting piece by piece like this is too cruel. It shouldn't be done. When I die, I wouldn't want it to be like this. Actually, after death, I feel however the corpse is treated is very cruel. It's just that we can't see it. If cremated, burned in fire, your entire flesh completely after a while, only a little bit of ash remains, even more cruel. Moreover, sky burial includes offering one's body as a gift. After death, one still makes a great offering, inviting many vultures. According to some church teachings, are said to be emanations of Dakinis. So the profound meaning of sky burial indeed needs to be deeply understood. We cannot judge it literally or by some behaviors, taking photos out of curiosity. Actually, there's nothing special about it. When people die, there's nothing pleasant to look at anyway. Therefore, regarding some behaviors, everyone should also understand. It's just that we haven't paid attention to many of these issues before. If we did pay attention, actually there is knowledge to be learned. Therefore, in India's 8 great charnel grounds, many former tantric hermits their experiences, including stories of their practice. We will also learn much about Indian culture and Tibetan culture, as well as other places, various fragments of Buddhism combined with life. What is said here is that supreme practitioners should be like this. Today, when we teach about ascetic practices for seeking the Dharma, Patrul Rinpoche mainly teaches about the spiritual levels of truly superior practitioners. But nowadays, people think that practice requires no hardship or diligence whatsoever. Many people in big cities also think this way. Ascetic practice is unnecessary. Diligence is unnecessary. They hold the expectation of accomplishing worldly affairs while also possessing happiness, comfort, and fame, and accomplishing the sacred Dharma, holding such extravagant hopes while never leaving worldly glory, wealth, and all pleasures, and feeling that, at the same time, one can practice the sacred Dharma, and also feeling that such a situation can be realized in others as well, and often saying, "My certain teacher is extremely virtuous. His own practice is also particularly excellent, wonderful. His level of realization is so lofty." Moreover, Regarding worldly dharmas, including charity work, including accepting disciples, he does everything so perfectly. There is no one as good as my teacher. Everything he does is particularly excellent. His transcendent spiritual realization is also very high. Regarding worldly matters, not to mention other things, just when eating, the teacher handles worldly dharmas particularly well, particularly perfectly. Many people probably say such things, but the author here has already refuted this viewpoint. How could there be a way to accomplish both worldly and transcendent dharmas perfectly? There is none. For truly superior practitioners, if worldly dharmas are done well, transcendent dharmas are not done well. If transcendent dharmas are done well, worldly dharmas are not done well. Those who think they can have both worldly and transcendent dharmas can certainly only be relatively prominent in worldly dharmas. Whether your teacher, your fellow practitioners, or other people, if you feel everything they do is excellent and wonderful, perhaps in your eyes, it might be that they do worldly dharmas well and conform to you often in dealing with people and handling affairs. Many things might particularly conform to worldly ways, if particularly conforming to worldly ways in their own mind stream. Practice may not necessarily be there. Worldly dharmas might be done well, but it's absolutely impossible to possess true transcendent dharmas. The spiritual levels of transcendent dharmas are absolutely impossible to have. Anyone who wants to achieve both worldly and transcendent dharmas at once is like thinking you can use a needle with two pointed ends to sew, making clothes, tailoring. That's impossible, right? A needle can only work with one pointed end, the other end cannot. So having needle points on both ends is impossible. Or can water and fire be contained in the same vessel, in one bucket, putting both fire and water? These two are contradictory things that cannot coexist. Impossible. One will be destroyed. Worldly and transcendent dharmas are the same. Or could you simultaneously ride two horses, galloping upward and downward, one going up, one going down? If you want to ride both, that's impossible. Either you go up or you go down. Either you ride this horse or you ride that horse. Either you go down or you go up. Worldly and transcendent dharmas are exactly the same. Obviously, such a situation is fundamentally impossible to achieve. In this world, there is not a single person who surpasses our great teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, whether in terms of wisdom, compassion, or character. In our world, there is absolutely no one who has surpassed such a great person as Buddha Shakyamuni, who has appeared in this world. But even Buddha did not devise a method to accomplish both worldly and transcendent dharmas simultaneously. Therefore, when he finally made his choice, discarding, like saliva, his royal position as King Shuddhodana's heir, completely abandoning it all, he left the palace. Beside the Vajra seat in India, by the Nairanjana river, he practiced austerities for 6 years, undergoing ascetic practices and diligent cultivation, during which he drank only 1 drop of water and ate 1 grain of rice per year in such ascetic practice. Actually, in the Sutra on the Prince's Auspicious Response, the entire process is also described. So here, everyone must understand. Many of us now, whether teachers or disciples, many people sometimes truly, Pachu Rinpoche spoke absolutely correctly about everything being, while I'm doing worldly dharmas, I also want to perfectly complete transcendent dharmas. That is obviously impossible, because, as we just explained, they are like water and fire. Worldly dharmas and transcendent dharmas are completely contradictory behaviors. When you seek liberation transcendentally, worldly dharmas cannot be accomplished. If you pursue worldly dharmas, then transcendent dharmas cannot be accomplished. So Buddha also had no other choice when he sought the highest supreme wisdom. For countless eons I practiced austerities, purifying all karmic obscurations, attaining supreme wisdom and virtues. He said, through countless eons I practiced austerities and purified negative karma to attain wisdom. What was the reason for his ascetic practice? It was to show us later students that actually, true realization and accomplishment is not easily achieved. You cannot obtain it while enjoying pleasures on the side. It's not like that. So some of our practitioners also cannot be too indulgent or too arrogant. We should analyze our own foundation properly. Perhaps some people constantly think, does this mean we lay practitioners, still cannot abandon our families, life, and work? Will we never have the opportunity to practice? Actually, this is not the case. As I just explained, regarding superior practitioners, we can also see now, truly those in the mountains, or some who practice as monastics forever, abandoning everything. Yesterday, when we held the forum, many university students also admired some monastics who have already abandoned everything for many years, family, livelihood, everything for many years now, in quiet mountains or in the academy, engaged in study, contemplation, and meditation. Very admirable. We cannot but acknowledge that they are superior. Whether they have realization, we observe separately, but their conduct should be something many of us worldly people cannot accomplish. Others have already accomplished this. This point cannot but be acknowledged. Having said that, especially for the majority of lay practitioners, can they never succeed in practice? That's not the case either. Our practice has layer upon layer, divided into many levels. Like Milarepa and Buddha Shakyamuni, the supreme level. Honestly speaking, some people might talk very big, but may not necessarily achieve it. So can we practice while living our lives? Actually, this is what middling practitioners should be able to do, or what lower middle level practitioners should be able to do. Buddha also permitted this. In Buddha's time, there were also lay practitioners and various levels of practitioners. You say, I cannot be a superior practitioner now, so I won't be a middling one or a lower one either. I'll simply never be a practitioner. This kind of reasoning might not be reasonable. I cannot be the best person, so I won't be a middling person or a somewhat lesser person either. Generally, when we study at school, I cannot be in the top 3, so now I won't study anymore. Such a choice might not be reasonable. Although I cannot be the best, cannot be a top-ranking student, I still need to complete my studies. I must do what I should do. We must strive. Therefore, we must understand. Sometimes we also see Dharma does not depart from worldly dharmas. The sixth patriarch also taught this. Sometimes Dharma and worldly dharmas are completely contradictory. This is taught according to different levels. Dharma does not depart from worldly dharmas is understood in two ways. Perhaps some who have seen through everything are already superior practitioners who have achieved realization after achievement. For some bodhisattvas with particularly high realization, when they guide sentient beings, they use worldly dharmas to guide sentient beings. From this perspective, it can also be called Dharma does not depart from worldly dharmas. Or in our practice process, though we cannot achieve the highest level, but at the middling or lower middle level, we should be able to practice some transcendent aspects while engaging worldly dharmas. In this way, achieving the highest realization in this lifetime may not necessarily be possible, but through many lifetimes, my own accumulations of merit will also increase. So in this regard, I hope many intellectuals and other practitioners should observe. Many people now, because actually from childhood, if one understands some principles of Buddhism, there might not be many problems, not many contradictions. Having never grown up in such an environment from childhood, when suddenly encountering Buddhism, naturally you originally had habits of non-integration. For another kind of faith or another kind of knowledge to enter your heart, there will certainly be some feelings of being unable to accept. So at such times, I feel learning is still needed. Understanding the meaning within is particularly important. Next, we discuss how Milarepa was the same. When practicing with no food in his mouth and no clothes on his back, relying solely on wild vegetables to satisfy hunger and practice. As a result, his entire body resembled a skeleton, with green hair growing all over because he ate too much nettle. I don't know if you've ever eaten it. When we were young, herding cattle, it was also very delicious. It's just that it has thorns, and if you are not careful, when those thorns touch your hand, it's particularly painful. Actually, the place where Milarepa lived had quite a lot of these wild vegetables. At the beginning, Milarepa also had some grain. Gradually, it was all used up, and for several years he continuously ate this. Later, all his paws became completely green, including his hair, which had all turned green. Gradually, the clothes he originally brought from home also wore out. Finally, there was nothing left, all completely gone. Once, a group of hunters came to where Milarepa was. They were all startled. Whether it was a ghost or human, they were particularly frightened. Milarepa himself said, "I am not a ghost, I am a human." That group of hunters was also particularly domineering, demanding he bring out food. Because that group of hunters had no food and hadn't eaten anything for several days, they prepared to rob Milarepa's things. But there were only a few wild vegetables and nothing else at all. Later they asked, "What exactly do you do?" He said, "I am a practitioner here." One person said, "Does anyone make offerings to you practicing like this?" He said, "I temporarily have no offerings, but I still practice." Later another person said, "What is an offering? What use are offerings?" He said, "If there are offerings, making offerings to practitioners accumulates merit, bringing good fortune and merit to oneself." The hunter deliberately slandered. "Then try it. Let me make an offering and see." He came over and grabbed Milarepa's body. Because he was originally very thin, he lifted him up and then threw him on the ground, deliberately humiliating and abusing him. Another person, having slightly more compassion, said, "Better not to do this. Forget it. He is, after all, a practitioner. Our hunger today was not caused by him. Don't be angry at him. He was particularly mean to him." Then this group of people gradually left. Another group of people came, and after arriving, they were also startled, wondering whether this was a ghost or spirit, particularly frightened. Later I think the biography describes it this way. I heard that the person who particularly humiliated Milarepa did not recite any evil curses for him, but perhaps it was Dharma protectors or other punishment, or perhaps his own negative karma manifested. Within a few days, he received the royal punishment and was executed. The other person who advised him later lived a particularly happy life in all respects. So I'm thinking, truly the principle of cause and effect is unfading. If you do bad things, you may not necessarily discover it immediately. But, as worldly people say, in your genes, a kind of cause and condition has accumulated. When it matures, it will certainly bring suffering to oneself. Therefore, I particularly hope, whether young people or all of us here, in the face of cause and effect, don't play hero with yourself. It doesn't matter, I'll do it, I'll kill living beings. This is like saying about poison. No problem, I'll eat this poison. After you eat it, temporarily it may not show, but at the end, when causes and conditions mature, only you yourself must bear it. The karmic results are quite terrifying. Many young people and some others, because of their own thinking, and possibly environment, education, various aspects related, many of us don't clearly understand benefit and harm relationships. This also happens. So what is mainly reflected here is not the issue of unfading cause and effect, but mainly about how Milarepa at that time, others looking at him, couldn't tell whether he was human or non-human, ghost. They had no idea so steadfastly, weathering hardships, diligently practicing the sacred Dharma. He was like this. Without practicing difficult austerities, one cannot attain omniscient wisdom. It seems the garland of examples adorned by poetic fancy also taught this. If one doesn't undergo a period of ascetic practice, one cannot attain true omniscient wisdom. Therefore, like great masters and Milarepa, They also underwent such ascetic practices and finally achieved accomplishment. This shows that worldly and transcendent dharmas cannot be accomplished simultaneously. Otherwise, how would Milarepa not have known to try every means possible to simultaneously accomplish worldly and transcendent dharmas? Milarepa was also from one perspective. He learned evil curses so quickly. When we learn mantras and study, it's very slow. Many people have no feeling at all. Although here, no one studies evil curses, right? But such a clever person, if truly worldly and transcendent dharmas could be accomplished at the same time, he would have done it. When he was practicing austerities with Marpa for a long time, after obtaining the sacred dharma, when he returned, he then saw that his family's house had already collapsed. His mother had already died, and her body was already buried in the ground. His family had a particularly precious sutra of the great heap of jewels. The sutra of the great heap of jewels was also scattered in pieces, having already become a bird's nest inside. At that time, he was very sad, taking up what remained of the sutra of the great heap of jewels, feeling that all phenomena are impermanent. At this time, someone told him, Milarepa, don't be sad. Actually, now you have returned from there, having learned much knowledge. You should also build a very good house like Marpa, like your teacher. And marry. You should take your original fiancé named Zese, right? Was a wow, awesome. Bring Zese over and live a very happy and fulfilling life together. At that time, Milarepa said, although my teacher can perform all kinds of profound actions, I do not have this kind of level of practice. Where a tiger can leap from a cliff, a frog has no way to jump. Later, this person also understood that some practices are not something you can accomplish just by imitating. So why did Milarepa practice austerities? Why did he abandon everything like this? Actually, there is true meaning in this. Now, a very few people have some opinions about Milarepa's biography, but such opinions, generally speaking, come from people who have not received proper systematic training or systematic study. They dare to say anything. They will say anything. Not to mention our Buddhism, even in worldly dharmas, especially when they go to some free countries, some act like madmen wanting to say everything, feeling that if they can say anything, they become famous. This is their purpose. I have also said before regarding Milarepa's biography. Regarding the biographies of great masters, including particularly valuable stories, our young people, especially those now with heavy conceptual thinking people participating in this symposium, should pay attention. In their future life journey, you cannot dismiss everything as superstition or as historical garbage. In the end, when you are old, you might deeply regret it. So we should have wisdom ourselves. This is very important. We should be able to distinguish truth from falsehood. This is very important. So Milarepa at that time was also like this. There was also the great master Vajramira called Melong Dorje. Previously, in the precious garden of history, there was also his story. He was about 27 years old when for 9 years he ate only tree bark and practiced the sacred Dharma, finally achieving accomplishment. This was one of Longchenpa's teachers. Actually, his biography is also very moving, continuously practicing austerities in quiet places. Latze is a type of tree that exists in many places in Tibetan areas. Generally, eating its bark doesn't cause any harm to the throat. He continuously ate this. In Han regions, there are also such examples. Previously, Master Lianchi also said, eating grass is better than an empty stomach. A thatched hut surpasses sleeping outdoors. If in life one understands contentment, all afflictions are temporarily removed. Master Lianchi's meaning is that truly dedicated practitioners eating some wild grass in the mountains can completely sustain life, and living in a thatched hut brings particularly happy days. What is most important? In life, one needs to know contentment and few desires. If one has contentment and few desires, then all afflictions are swept away, completely gone. So we people now indeed have lives that are too complicated. When life becomes more and more complicated, people's stress becomes greater and suffering increases. After this, there's no way to truly practice. Especially as practitioners, truly a relatively simple life. Not only practitioners, worldly people are also like this. If life becomes simpler and simpler, there won't be so many troubles. This is extremely important. Previously, it seems Master Dame also said, 1 pound of lotus leaves provides endless clothing. Several trees of pine flowers provide surplus food. If one wears the lotus leaves from 1 lotus pond, endless and boundless clothes, extremely good clothing. Eating pine tree flowers and fruits is the best food. Actually, in the Chan school of Han regions, there were countless Chan masters who completely relied on some wild vegetables or fruits for sustenance, completing their entire lives. At that time, Chan Master Dame initially was in a mountain. His fellow practitioners found him and asked him to return to the monastery. He was unwilling and wrote such a verse. I think I've taught this before. He wrote a verse and then disappeared into the mountains. Later, people didn't know his whereabouts. Truly dedicated practitioners really live in the mountains, dying in the mountains, unfindable. Truly dedicated practitioners are unfindable. Similarly, the omniscient Longchenpa for many months sustained life eating only 21 mercury pills. I think in the biography it records 3 measures of barley tsampa. At that time, for 2 months at Samye Chimpu, he relied on the venerable Kumaraza and performed many austerities. When it snowed, he crawled into a yak hair sack. This sack served both as clothing and as an evening seat cushion. Aside from this, there was nothing else. During this period, from the transcendent Dharma aspect, he also practiced austerities with such hardship. Actually, Longchenpa in all of history was truly a very great accomplished master. Later, as we all know, he composed the 7 treasuries and 3 rests. These are all truly the Vajrawas of accomplished masters. In their stories, all have a period of ascetic practice. So I think, especially we who are learning, whether seeking worldly knowledge or seeking transcendent spiritual levels, we should make effort not to be particularly complicated. Now, much information comes in floods every day. There are many conceptual thoughts, many obstacles to practice, truly countless. Every day facing all kinds of chaotic various things, one's real practice is truly non-existent. Sometimes I myself, probably for about 3 or 4 years now, the conditions and circumstances for my true ascetic practice are insufficient. But I try, when at the academy in the afternoon, to turn off the phone for a few hours and cleanse my mind. Just like a computer having a lot of chaotic things inside. After a period of time, if you don't clean the disk, in the end, it all starts getting infected with viruses and stops working. So in this world, if every day various kinds of information continuously flood oneself, continuously like this, never cleaning up, at the end, there might really be some problems. Who knows? So sometimes, letting the mind settle down slightly, then reciting 2 sutras, looking at some books by predecessor great masters, relaxing oneself a bit. We don't have the conditions like ancient great masters to forever dwell hidden in the mountains. We don't have such opportunities. But actually in the city, if you truly have this heart, not to say for many days, but for 1 or 2 hours, you can quiet yourself down a bit. Now when many people are quarreling, don't talk to me. I want to be quiet. I want to calm down. I want to observe my state of mind. Actually, when they're particularly angry and have no way to face it, I want to be quiet. No, I'm not thinking about anything now. Many people say this. But that kind of practice is somewhat different from our true practice. At that time, they are particularly angry and for them it's a kind of resistant retreat. Such examples should be quite numerous. All accomplished masters of the past were entirely throwing worldly trivialities behind them. undergoing austerities and practicing diligently, thereby attaining such great accomplishments. Not a single person accomplished worldly affairs while possessing happiness, comfort, and reputation, successfully practicing and achieving accomplishment. Truly wanting to achieve accomplishment in this lifetime, very high accomplishment, should be non-existent. Some worldly people also talk big talk, but truly many words of Chan masters in Han regions: see through, let go, be free. First let go, then see through, then gain freedom. Or first see through, then let go, and after letting go, gain freedom. This is the basic vocabulary of many practitioners. But I think 70 to 80%, one could say over 90% of people, most people now completely letting go like before. This is indeed unrealistic. We middle-level practitioners should be able to do ascetic practices for the Dharma. Now some people sacrifice something of themselves to listen to the Dharma. This should be worthwhile. Let's look at Buddha Shakyamuni and great masters, how they practiced austerities in the process of seeking Dharma in the past, so we should understand this. Previously, Rukjin Jigme Lingpa, also known as Jigme Lingpa, said this: if practitioners have abundant food and clothing, comfortable dwellings, virtuous patrons, and everything complete, then before the sacred Dharma is accomplished, demonic Dharma is already accomplished. This is said extremely correctly. A practitioner having food and clothing, particularly complete and sufficient, and their dwelling is also particularly comfortable. 1 room won't do, 2 rooms, 2 rooms won't do, 3 rooms, 4, 5, 6. Many practitioners are particularly extravagant, constantly wanting their dwellings. Today also need bang 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 renovation. Tomorrow also need buzz buzz buzz. If they can't find workers, they themselves take a hammer and nails, and then bang bang bang, wanting to make their dwelling, food and clothing all completely perfect. And patrons also continuously send to them throughout the month. Now sending is not like in the past. Previously with patrons, mountain practitioners had to go down to the foot of the mountain, or patrons from below had to come up to the mountain. So in Milarepa songs it also says, when causes and conditions are complete between patrons in the city and practitioners on the mountain, how they create a future of liberation, and so forth. Now it's not needed, just make a phone call. A practitioner in the mountains makes one phone call, and people below immediately transfer money to the mountain practitioner's card. After transferring money, the practitioner can immediately enjoy it. So sometimes an electronic and information-based world also provides convenience for practice. Indeed, some practitioners may not need to be like in the past. In the past, even for 1 bag of grain, it took many days. Now it's not needed. Now on one hand, if one can practice, many favorable conditions are convenient. But if practice is not good, patrons are sufficient, food is sufficient, clothing is sufficient, dwelling is sufficient. But at that time, before the true Dharma is accomplished, demonic Dharma is already complete. What is demonic Dharma? Causes of scattered practice, practice that never succeeds. The foolish person craves profit and offerings, not seeing their harmful effects. The garland of examples, adorned by poetic fancy, also teaches this. The foolish person craves profit and offerings, not seeing their harmful effects. Profit and offerings distance one from the holy path. Good deeds disappear and are not generated. This is said very clearly. As ignorant people, they constantly crave profit, offerings, and wealth. They have no idea of its harmful effects. True profit and offerings, whether fame, wealth, or dwelling, if particularly excellent, still pose certain obstacles to one's practice. Actually, a particularly simple life is truly very beneficial for your practice. We constantly crave various profits and offerings, unaware of their harmful effects. Many practitioners now truly represent characteristics of the degenerate age. When we often debate with each other or ask questions, many people often say about certain practitioners, their living conditions, including mansions and cars, everything is complete. But do they possess the characteristics of so-called practitioners or teachers? In different occasions, I have also considered and answered this question. If we generalize and say all such situations are unreasonable, I might not dare to say because indeed there are some great accomplished masters who, although possessing wealth, are not necessarily attached to it. But there are also quite a number of people who have no idea of the benefits and harms. They just blindly crave worldly dharmas and desperately seek them. In the end, both themselves and others fall into decline. Offering donors because their merit is insufficient have not encountered particularly excellent fields of merit. The field of merit itself originally has such purposes. Their purpose is not liberation. So often in sutras and treatises, it's said that when seeking spiritual teachers, first, examine the teacher's characteristics. This is also very important. If one is not a teacher but a practitioner, one should practice in a life of contentment and few desires. This will certainly provide great convenience for your realization. So as practitioners, regardless of where we are, if conditions are too good, this is indeed also detrimental to your practice. This is a fact. But there's also no need to be overly extreme. Although one has some conditions when first learning Buddhism, many people think, I must be a superior practitioner, never lying down at night. Everything must be done as austerities, all clothing at home, everything thrown out, all food, deliberately eating particularly poor things. If you can persevere forever, that's fine. But you may not necessarily be able to persist. When people first begin practicing, we often say, beginning practitioners have Buddha in their heart. After a period of time, Buddha is at the horizon. So sometimes initial, particularly urgent faith may not necessarily be sustained forever. But generally speaking, I particularly admire some who, for years, 10 to 20 years, or throughout their lives, have faith in the Dharma. In their conduct, they don't crave wealth or fame, only constantly thinking about Dharma and benefiting beings. Such spirit is very commendable. So everyone here, many are true Buddhists. Everyone should contemplate these principles well. Actually, regarding true wealth, previously in the Sutra of King Asoka, there's an example. If you're attached to it, you can never achieve accomplishment. There was a venerable who went to practice and could never achieve accomplishment. Later, Upagupta told him it was because of his attachment to his own body. Then he told him to climb up a tree and let his 2 feet hang down. This person was very afraid, with both hands gripping above. He told him to let go, one hand. With one hand, let go. Now his entire body was supported by one hand. At this time, Upagupta demanded he let go the other hand as well. And below was a 10,000-foot abyss, particularly deep. He said, I cannot. If I let go now, there's only the path of death. What to do? What about my body? Later, the venerable demanded he let go. Then he thought, I rely on my teacher. No matter what, I must follow instructions. His attachment to his own body was suddenly released. After letting go, he did not fall, but attained arhat fruition on the spot. In our Shravaka Sutra Pitaka, there are also such examples. So when we truly let go of attachment to body and wealth, when attachment is released, many wonderful worlds will manifest before our eyes. Yesterday at our symposium, some teachers also taught everyone and gave some instructions to young people about future life. Especially beings in the desire realm. When you are attached to sensual desires, if you don't have attachment to the other person, indeed much happiness will appear before your eyes. Otherwise, the more you are attached, the more suffering. And in the end, you might very likely choose suicide. Because all worldly sense pleasures being forever unchanging is impossible. Everything will change. When change occurs, if your attachment hasn't been released, problems will definitely arise in life, not to mention in practice. Also, as Geshe Shawopa said, if from the depths of your heart you want to practice Dharma, then your mind must rely on poverty until death. If you can generate such an intention, then gods, humans, and spirits will certainly not cause you difficulties. If we truly want to abandon everything and have such an attitude, all Dharma protectors, spirits, and humans will help. Some people think, Oh, abandon everything, no matter what, I must be a practitioner. In this case, initially you might constantly encounter obstacles and difficulties, but in the end, as we can prove from history, truly dedicated practitioners in the end, no one starved to death, no one froze to death. So generally speaking, practitioners are different from otherworldly people. Another worldly person saying, I don't want to work no matter what. If I abandon all affairs, they might very well starve to death. No one else would care about you. This is possible. But practitioners relying on the blessings of the three Jews or protection of Dharma protectors in the end will not fail to succeed. They will succeed. Milarepa also taught this way. When I'm ill, no one inquires. When I die, no one will cry. To die in this mountain fulfills this yogi's heart's desire. He sang these songs in the mountain cave. He said, living in this mountain cave now brings me particular happiness. When I'm sick, no one asks about me. When I die, no one will cry. If I could die in such a state in this mountain cave, how blissful that would be. This yogi's heart is already completely satisfied. But our thinking is completely different, especially now. People in worldly cities have completely different thinking. Many people think, when I die, when I'm sick, what will I do? What if no one asks about me? When I die, what if no one looks? Especially now, many lay people who don't believe in Buddhism, when their children become monastics or go elsewhere to practice, they are particularly sad. What's the reason for their sadness? My child became a monastic. What should I do? When I'm sick, what should I do? When I die, what should I do? When sick, if you should die, you die. If you should live, you live. After death, whether the corpse is handled or not handled is fine. If our minds are truly a bit more open after a person dies, however the corpse is, it won't forever remain like a Vajra body, harming sentient beings. There should be nothing to it. But being unable to think it through is also understandable. Imposing very high spiritual levels on everyone is unreasonable. But indeed, Milarepa had this realization. He said, when sick, having no one ask is the happiest. We're not like this. When I'm sick, someone must ask about me. Otherwise, if no one asks about me, I might be particularly sad and suffering. Then he said, outside my door, no human tracks. Inside my room, no bloodstains. To die in this mountain fulfills this yogi's heart's desire. Outside my door, there are no human footprints, no guests, no coming and going. Inside my room, there are no bloodstains from accumulating various wealth. The meaning is that we worldly people now have particularly many chaotic things and many conceptual thoughts. There are also particularly many rats and everything is particularly abundant. Truly, yogis in mountain caves have nothing. Like with Milarepa, when a group of thieves came to the mountain cave in the middle of the night, they kept groping around. Milarepa began laughing loudly. Those people said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "When I grope around in the daytime, I can't find anything either. In such a pitch-black night, how could you possibly find anything?" So Milarepa was very happy. Milarepa's joyful laughter and his sister's painful cries, these two, one laughing sound and one crying sound, intertwined together in the mountain cave, creating another kind of sound. This is also described in a biography. For example, a yogi, a true practitioner, when he encounters some suffering, he might feel it's extremely rare, feel joyful, and emit such laughter. Another person might be particularly suffering. Sounds of pain and sounds of joy will also exist. But this is truly someone with particularly high spiritual realization. We, ordinary worldly people, looking at this probably wouldn't understand, but we should understand. Oh, those with true realization are like this. Dying in the mountains brings great happiness to practitioners. Where I go, no one asks. This going has no fixed destination. To die in this mountain fulfills this yogi's heart's desire. Milarepa said, in the mountain cave, if I want to go out today, no one asks. If I stay here today and go somewhere tomorrow, there are no constraints, no fixed dwelling, no bondage, no boss, no need to ask for leave, No need to tell lies or deceive others. Otherwise, what would I do after going down? There's none of this. But I think before reaching such a spiritual level, it's also best not to separate oneself from such groups. Otherwise, some people suddenly think, I also want to be like Milarepa and separate from this group. Some of our volunteers here also have such thoughts, hearing that other teachers are very good. They already left. After leaving, after some time, wanting to return but unable to. Then outside, seemingly drifting uncertainly, very painful. Finally returning home. Family members ignore them. Returning anywhere, nowhere accepts them. Finally drifting in between. After drifting for several years, continuously shedding tears onto the earth, giving the people of the world some warmth, some happiness, right? Such tears. So, having no fixed destination, dying in the mountains is very happy. Rotting flesh feeds the worms. Blood vessels provide for mosquitoes. To die in this mountain fulfills this yogi's heart's desire. When dying, after worms eat the corpse and mosquitoes suck all the blood and related substances, if after a person dies, no one looks and the corpse is not handled, how wonderful that is. So, Milarepa's spiritual realization should be extremely high. Many of us, indeed, why did I just say this is for superior practitioners? We haven't reached this yet, but we must. Recently, I've seen many Buddhists in their statements truly have a heart to benefit beings and a heart for practice. So we cannot reach Milarepa's level. We shouldn't be discouraged. I'm also thinking, as long as one can practice even 1 hour of Dharma per day throughout one's lifetime, striving in study, contemplation and meditation, even if for just one being, temporarily alleviating a little suffering, we should still strive. This is the spirit of Buddhism. So, in our process of study and contemplation, we must analyze these priorities. Therefore, we must let go of all worldly attachments, letting them go with the wind, disregarding all hardships, difficulties, heat and cold, and practice the sacred Dharma. The third is patience in fearlessly accepting profound Dharma meanings. When hearing profound emptiness, reality, especially the essence of great perfection reality that is free from fabrication, the 12 Vajra laughs that transcend good and evil karma, the 8 unprecedented verses and other Dharma teachings, one must absolutely not give rise to wrong views and must by all means accept their hidden meaning without distortion. This is extremely important. Some people hearing emptiness teachings, especially in tantric teachings, the 12 great laughs, 8 unprecedented verses we previously taught, the treasury of word and meaning from the 7 treasuries, the teacher's commentary on the essentials of cutting through, these all contain such teachings. These are generally particularly frightening when taught. For example, the minds of hell beings have no difference from Shamantabhadra's wisdom. Hell and heaven are without duality. Ordinary practitioners cannot accept this. Actually, there are many such teachings in Chan as well, including the Perfect Enlightenment Sutra and Shurangama Sutra. These also contain very high spiritual levels, but when these people encounter, for example, when hearing emptiness principles, some who haven't studied and contemplated before immediately generate fear. This is unreasonable. One must try every means to accept its hidden meaning without distortion. Actually, many principles Buddha taught have hidden meanings. This hidden meaning must be understood. Otherwise, if wrong views arise or one engages in slander, this is called the crime of abandoning Dharma, which is particularly terrifying. This kind of negative karma cannot be liberated from the depths of hell for countless eons. Previously, Karma Chagme Rinpoche also said, when we hear about the merits of virtuous dharmas and the faults of non-virtuous dharmas, as well as the sufferings and lifespans of hell beings, etc., if we think these are untrue and generate wrong views, this is even more serious than committing the 5 heinous crimes. So, we must be liberated from such inexpiable negative karma. We must openly confess and purify. Once, there were 2 Indian monks who upheld the 12 ascetic practices. The 12 ascetic practices in the Hinayana are explained below. These 2 Indian monks practicing the 12 ascetic practices came before Atisha. When the Venerable taught them about selflessness of persons, these 2 were filled with joy and very happy. When he taught about selflessness of phenomena, these 2 became extremely frightened and afraid. They said, "This is too frightening. Please, Venerable Atisha, don't continue teaching." Perhaps Atisha did this intentionally. He recited the Heart Sutra for them. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness, no other than form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. These 2 people covered their ears with both hands and ran away, extremely frightened. We also have such people now. Indeed, sometimes when teaching a bit of simple human merit and charity, teaching some compassion and peace, when speaking this way, some people all say, yes, Buddhism is very good. I heard you recently also teach peace in Buddhism. They are still very interested in peace. But when you teach them some emptiness, not to mention tantric teachings when we explain the meaning of Prajnaparamita, then they become unpeaceful and very frightened. Including now, there's a Dharma master in Taiwan who often teaches from the Agama Sutras and principles from the Sutra of Individual Liberation, taking some principles from these texts out of context, then through the internet and many channels, saying tantric mantras are unreasonable, tantric scriptures are unreasonable. I've really seen this. It's particularly frightening. And what he says is completely. For example, when the group of 6 monks were outside seeking alms through mantras, Buddha Shakyamuni said, one cannot use mantras to confuse others. Taking this passage, he doesn't know what came before or after, saying, later, Shurangama mantras and many mantras should be creations of later people. Such people, truly on the surface, as Longchenpa said, insect-like followers are many, but actually they are all self-deceiving and deceiving others. This is said very correctly. So when our wisdom hasn't matured, whether as Buddhists or non-Buddhists, creating terribly frightening karma by slandering Mahayana Buddhism, this is not something ordinary small people can accomplish. It's particularly terrifying. For example, if I had never studied any quantum mechanics, if I wanted to stand up, having only read through 1st grade, then I want to protest. Starting today, I will overturn all viewpoints of quantum mechanics. Could this succeed? Impossible. Some people are very ridiculous. They don't even know what quantum mechanics is. Has this person really gone mad or what? People nearby who have studied these principles would understand. So some people now who know nothing about Mahayana Buddhism regarding emptiness, as soon as emptiness teachings are mentioned, it's not reasonable. Some people don't even know the basic concepts of emptiness, so we should sometimes truly slandering Mahayana Dharma, the entering the way of the great vehicle states. Slandering Mahayana Dharma definitely leads to evil realms. This is said very correctly. They will definitely enter evil realms. At that time, Atisha also said with great sadness, if one doesn't cultivate oneself with compassion and bodhicitta, and doesn't develop faith in profound teachings, merely relying on maintaining some pure precepts cannot achieve any accomplishment. Many Hinayana practitioners are like this now, and so are worldly people, never researching Buddhism, never understanding Buddhism, constantly saying, this place is wrong, Buddha Shakyamuni such and such, this place is wrong. It's particularly ridiculous, honestly. Some people, regarding truly even having them study the root stanzas of the middle way, after studying one chapter, they can no longer continue. Although they might have some other titles and be particularly arrogant, this arrogance is ignorant arrogance, not true merit-based arrogance. Therefore, regarding Mahayana Buddhism and Buddha Shakyamuni's vast boundless knowledge, for ordinary small people to stand up and speak, I think It's not so easy, really not so easy, including some Buddhists who think having some criticism of Mahayana, Tantra, or Buddhism as a whole is merely creating negative karma for oneself. If they truly had such ability, they could debate with some Geshis, Dharma masters, or Khenpos. Within 3 minutes, all their thoughts would definitely be overturned. In the end, they might fail in this life and fall in the next. 2 outcomes. In the past, when Buddha was in this world, there were also many arrogant monks who, upon hearing profound emptiness reality, vomited blood and died, then fell into hell. Such examples are very numerous. Previously, when Buddha was in this world, some people didn't understand emptiness, later slandered it, and after slandering, fell. Actually, it's best. I hope people don't slander. If one slanders Mahayana, such causes and conditions are complete. Not just one cause and condition, but when your type of cause is complete, it's truly like a simple chemical experiment. In our world, when hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms are complete, they produce water. This is a very simple matter. So you're slandering oxygen atom and your own malicious hydrogen atom. When these causes and conditions are complete, one will definitely fall. There's nothing to say about this. So we often some say, impossible. Are the 3 jewels blessings so effective? Impossible. Actually, we have no reason to deny this. You have faith in your heart, then the blessings of the 3 jewels, when these 2 causes and conditions are complete, some things are accomplished with remarkable coincidence. A while ago, I joked with many intellectuals. Are we becoming like some elderly people talking about miraculous powers? Actually, no. There are truly many profound issues involved. When one's own faith is complete and the 3 jewels blessings and merits, when such causes and conditions are complete, things that ordinary people cannot accomplish are already fulfilled. But why do some people pray but things don't succeed? You have one side's causes and conditions complete, but the other sides aren't. This also happens. For example, if my karma is very heavy and this matter itself cannot succeed, then the element of 3 jewels blessings is certainly there. But my previous causes and conditions still need to receive some limitations. My element still has problems. So regarding some causal relationships, at least learning basic worldly concepts will help us understand many principles. Therefore, we should generate confident faith and reverence toward profound sacred Dharma. And those who expound these teachings from the depths of our hearts, those who expound emptiness and emptiness teachings, we should ideally generate faith toward them. We ourselves truly have no way to comprehend. Wherever there are people learning emptiness teachings, these people are remarkable, and these teachings are remarkable. I should generate faith. If due to our shallow wisdom, we truly cannot generate understanding, then we must absolutely not go and slander it. Emptiness should be taught according to the situation, not expounded in inappropriate places. If expounded in inappropriate places, nectar becomes poison. Previously, it seems in the Sutra of the Dense Array, there was such a verse. Emptiness. If causes and conditions are complete, you can teach it to them. But if they're unsuitable vessels with incomplete causes and conditions, and particularly poor receptivity, you'd better not teach them. If you do teach, originally emptiness teachings are like nectar medicine. But nectar medicine can easily become poison, and deadly poison. There's this possibility of transformation. Dharma is naturally beneficial for every sentient being, but if your own vessel has defilements, ultimately it may not necessarily be beneficial. Therefore, we should try to ensure that people with shallow wisdom don't slander it. If you truly cannot accept it, just don't speak about it. Some people are like this. Anyway, I don't understand. I won't say anything. Forget it. You study your thing. I don't care. I heard there's a lay practitioner whose husband says every day while smoking, sigh. Anyway, you study your thing. I don't understand. I won't say anything about your stuff. Anyway, I'll smoke my cigarettes. This is still a wise choice. You neither slander nor support her. Anyway, she does her thing. I smoke my cigarettes. I drink my alcohol. In this way, although I create karma in another aspect, I don't deliberately slander. Some people now who have a little bit of wisdom, but this wisdom is particularly shallow. Most love to speak about Dharma's rights and wrongs, monastics' rights and wrongs. Actually, we have no need to create verbal karma. This type of karma is very frightening. We should purify our own mind stream. This is very important. So here the author also says that try to eliminate false slander is particularly important, everyone present, because our Dharma study is not just verbal or superficially speaking about it. It should be particularly important to be able to stop some negative actions in our own behavior. So try not to slander Mahayana Buddhism. Today we'll stop here.
Bandara Bandara